Hello there. Lake Titicaca in South America is both the largest freshwater lake in South America and just one of the largest in the world. It's also, in terms of elevation, the highest of the large lakes, sitting at 3,810 meters above sea level, and is one of less than 20 so-called ancient lakes on Earth. And this body of water is thought to be at least 3 million years old, covering 3,200 square miles. It's situated between Peru to the west and Bolivia to the east, and lies in a vast basin that's named after the lake itself, in between different Andean mountain ranges. Because of this unique location and height, Lake Titicaca can face extremes in temperatures, and is just unique biologically for many reasons. But this whole basin that the lake is in has also played home to humans for thousands and thousands of years. In fact, the earliest evidence found so far of people living in the Titicaca Basin comes from 8,000 BCE, meaning that people have been living in this area despite the challenges it can sometimes face for at least 10,000 years. And the place we're going to be visiting today is one of the most famous and yet still most mysterious sites and cultures that has ever made its home along the shores of this mysterious ancient lake. Just off the Bolivian shore of Lake Titicaca, on what's known as the Altiplano, or literally a high plain, lies the enigmatic ruined city of Tiwanaku. This place has fascinated archaeologists and anthropologists and just people all over the world alike ever since accounts of it started being written by international visitors when the Spanish came to colonize the region. And while the Spanish colonizers were shocked by the city when they discovered it, they were not the first people to stumble across Tiwanaku. And I must say too, it wasn't built just before the arrival of them. The Inca, perhaps the most famous of the South American ancient civilizations, also had their own stumble-across moment with Tiwanaku, because I want to make it clear, the Inca didn't build this place either. And the Inca were so impressed by it when they saw it as well, that they even incorporated this place into the mythology of their culture. And they came to believe that their creator god, Viracocha, must have resided here. Now, the Inca people, despite their fame, really had their height and flourished between 1400 to 1533 CE, at which point they were cut short by the arrival of the Spanish. But they had existed before that, at least in some form, since at least 1100 CE. I think this is all worth noting because even the Inca, like I said, they didn't know who built this place. And in fact, even today, we still don't know who built this place. We've named this elusive, mysterious ancient people that built this city, Tiwanaku, after the name of the city itself. We have no idea what they would have called themselves, and the name Tiwanaku comes from the modern-day Aymara people, a modern-day indigenous people of the region who today believe themselves to be the descendants of the creators of the city. It's the Aymarans that gave this ancient city the name that we use today, and Tiwanaku, if translated, means literally the stone in the center, referencing the fact that amongst their people, this city was believed to be the center of the whole world. And honestly, even just looking at the images of it here, I think it's easy to see why. It's an incredibly beautiful spot. And archaeologists have been working here now for well over 100 years to try to get to the bottom of all the questions we have about Tiwanaku. Unfortunately, they haven't yet. But perhaps there's no more telling and fascinating spot in all of this mysterious ancient city than a set of old would-be temple ruins known today as Pumapunku. Now, I should say, just like all of Tiwanaku, Pumapunku's date of construction is the subject of a little bit of debate. As I mentioned earlier, people have been living in this basin in this general area since at least 8,000 BCE. But radiocarbon dating suggests that the earliest monumental structures actually built at Tiwanaku date to around 200 CE. Though I say around, as it's still a little murky. And because of that murkiness, there have been ancient aliens enthusiasts and others who have suggested that Tiwanaku is 14,000 or even 17,000 years old, but this is based on extremely faulty data, and we'll talk about this stuff a little later. Now, all of Tiwanaku is stunning and beautiful, featuring large open spaces for religious activities, and fine stonework was everywhere. Beautifully carved temples were all over this place. It's not just the beauty of these ruins that have fascinated people, but instead how they're made themselves. The stone blocks that make up Tiwanaku as a whole and our site of notice, Pumapunku, are absolutely massive, each one weighing several tons. And the largest stone slab found at the site weighs over 180 tons. All of this stonework features precise cuts at perfectly straight edges. And not only that, but at our site specifically in Pumapunku, there are some really unique features that, in terms of building and construction, set this place apart from literally anywhere else in the ancient world. All of this displays a huge amount of technical engineering ability and has led scholars to speculate that the people that lived at this city and that built this city must have had complex knowledge of mathematics, engineering, and in relation to how some of these buildings are laid out, especially the religious structures, to line up with the stars or celestial events, they must have had great astronomical knowledge too. Which, of course, is part of what's led to the whole ancient aliens thing. People are curious about how an amazing place like this was built. And this is what makes Pumapunku, in particular in the city, so fascinating and why we're going to be focusing on it today. Because Pumapunku is a part of the city that was never completely finished. Here at Pumapunku, we can truly see how these people were actually building this place. And Pumapunku itself seems to have been a place of particular note and importance. So we can learn a lot from it. And in fact, just in the recent last few years, we have. It's one of the best examples. It shows us both instances of their big, unique, bold architecture and hints at the secrets behind it. But the fact that it wasn't finished, well, that points us a little bit towards the end of Tiwanaku as a whole, and about how what caused the fall of Tiwanaku and who caused the fall of Tiwanaku has repercussions and effects right up into our present day. But we'll get into all that. We'll get into what we know of Tiwanaku, what we know of where its people went, and like I said, we'll take a closer look at the specific spot of Pumapunku, because there's so much for us to unpack here. But first, I can't get so carried away, I forget to say, welcome. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here. I am your host. I am Marie. Welcome to Lost Bits, the place where we look at unusual and mysterious parts from our past together. And I'm so excited to share with you a little bit about the Gate of the Puma and the lost stonemasons of Tiwanaku. And I know Tiwanaku is already incredibly famous, and this place as a whole has had people so fascinated for so long, and it's been such an important site and part of history to different cultural groups for so long that honestly almost every single stone of the city of Tiwanaku as a whole has been moved around and shuffled around and changed over the years. And lots of different groups, as you just heard me allude to, have tried to claim ownership over Tiwanaku. So people have been trying to find out more about this ancient culture and place for a really long while, but it's much more difficult than it may seem, even with all the ruins and remains that they've left us. I can't wait to show you some more about it. Okay, we have to just dive right in. It's time. I'm so ready. Are you ready? I'm so ready. We're ready for some ancient Bolivian urban bits? Oh my goodness, we sound so cosmopolitan. God, you guys. Stepping back and looking at the whole of Tiwanaku again. Well, initially thought by early archaeologists to be just a sacred site or location, we now know in fact that Tiwanaku was a bustling city. And like any city, it took time to grow. Well, like I said, the initial monuments were built at a much earlier date. It's around 600 to 900 CE that our city really reached the height of its heyday. Famous for its many mysterious gates and ruins of temples, and for the ruins of its pyramid today, it's easy to see why at first these kind of dominated the public imagination and people only saw the sort of religious aspect of the site. But researchers now believe that at its peak, this city may have housed as many as 40,000 people, with a carefully designed residential district in the city, and in fact the whole city itself was laid out spectacularly well on a grid system, very similar in a sense to the cities of today. And in fact, in the part of the city where the richest residents lived, known as the Putuni, there was even a water drainage system, a very sophisticated form of technology for this time period. And this technology is also seen in the sunken court at the pyramid at Tiwanaku. And frankly, as impressive as this is, this would not have been even the only perk of being an ancient citizen of the city. The people that lived here had access to a wide trade network and would have been able to get extremely exquisite pottery, as well as items made of copper, silver, and beautiful shells. Both alpacas and llamas are native to this region too. But honestly, guys, I have to go back to that pottery for a second, because look at this! Look at this! Oh my goodness! Like, I feel like the term exquisite pottery or beautiful pottery really doesn't do this justice. Like, some of this is like, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Can we just bask for a second? Let's just bask. Okay, seriously, this is a spouted vessel made to look like a man holding a spouted vessel. They're doing meta pottery. Though perhaps even more impressive than their pottery, though honestly I feel like I'm lying saying that now, was the Tiwanaku people's inventive use of raised farming beds. Rain can be scarce at times in the Titicaca Basin. The construction of raised fields and canals to channel lake and rainwater helped make large-scale farming possible, both for the production of basic food and other things. They grew corn and made beer, though they had to migrate down to the lower elevation areas nearby to do it. And soon, in general, the people of Tiwanaku would spread out as their city grew to expand their influence and grow their culture in other places. And this whole period of growth and wealth and splendor from 600 to 900 CE had a profound impact on the city and its residents. Some of the art and architecture that decorate the ruins of Tiwanaku today is still absolutely breathtaking. Particularly of note are the religious images and statues that cover different areas of the city, such as this one depicting what's referred to as the staff god. And it also has to be said that this place, Tiwanaku, seems to have become an area of religious pilgrimage for many different local peoples in its own day and for many, many centuries after. In the lake by which Tiwanaku sat, Lake Titicaca, there are two islands that in their mythology seem to have come to represent both the sun and the moon. Pilgrimages would be made by people out to these islands and offerings left that archaeologists have started to recover and analyze today. And on the whole, the image Tiwanaku presents to us is one of an ancient, thriving cultural metropolis. And coming back now finally to the main topic of our video, Pumapunku. Its construction seems to have begun right around the same time that the city itself reached its heyday, sometime between 536 to 600 CE. Here we can openly see displayed the high precision holes that were drilled, and perhaps most strikingly we can see how they used here, you can see it, holes in geometric shapes to sort of turn the blocks themselves into almost like giant Lego pieces that could be connected together. Perhaps the most famous are these so-called H-shaped blocks, which were not only meant to be joined together, but actually have some other mysteries to them we're going to be talking about a little bit more soon. Now, again, this site has been sort of ransacked and rummaged through, and there's even a kind of shoddy reconstruction done in somewhat modern times. But that hasn't stopped researchers from trying to figure out what Pumapunku was supposed to look like if they had gotten a chance to finish it, or from trying to figure out how they were able to carve and make these huge stone blocks in the first place and just get them here. And in 2018, modern-day archaeologists and researchers started analyzing the literal stones themselves of Pumapunku and took samples of the stones back for them to look at under electron microscope. And this is the first time that anything like this was ever done, and they made an absolutely groundbreaking discovery. These H stones that you're seeing here, and in fact many of these giant slabs of rock, aren't actually rock, or at least not in the way that you're probably thinking. These are artificial geopolymers. Basically, these were made using an ancient form of concrete. Yeah, you're looking at giant concrete blocks here. And in recent years too, based off of the remains at the site and other archaeological evidence, researchers started literally 3D printing different components of Pumapunku to try to put together what its finished form was supposed to be. And they eventually came up with a really intriguing model here. Look at this. This is very, very cool. But you can see how just studying this one part of the city has taught us already so much, even if we still have a lot of questions. And honestly, due to the complex engineering and technical innovation we see at Pumapunku, many in recent years have also started suggesting that, possibly this place wasn't even built by humans. This site of Pumapunku has become a favorite spot for ancient aliens enthusiasts. This is based on somewhat faulty data. Like a researcher in the 1920s came out and made some pretty wild theories, and they seem to sort of catch on. I admit in general too, I am a little wary of ancient aliens theories because some of them, not all of them, but some of them smack of undercurrents of racism, and it makes me extremely uncomfortable. I will say that the dating now available that I gave you for this site does seem very accurate. I admit I don't really know how they built this place. I do genuinely believe that humans did so. And hopefully in the future, as more study is done, we'll learn more about the whole construction process, and that will put some of these sort of more fringe theories to rest. And I want to say in general, I'm not averse to the idea of aliens visiting our planet, but I need more evidence than someone just saying, well, this is really crazy, they couldn't have built this, which basically seems to sum up the ancient aliens argument. But hopefully, as the years go on, we'll find out more about how they did so and about what the ancient culture of the Tiwanaku people was like. Because unfortunately, as you heard me allude to a couple times now, the people of Tiwanaku are not still with us today. After that critical year, that year 900 CE, things all throughout the Titicaca Basin would start to change. A major drought seems to have hit this region at this time, and not only that, but different neighboring kingdoms as a collective started to rise up against the people of Tiwanaku, a group known as the Aymara Kingdoms, comprised of Kola, Lupaka, Kana, Kenchi, Umaseo, and Pakahe people, all combined their forces to attack and try to take down Tiwanaku. Meanwhile, infighting seems to have been rampant in the city. In this time of stress, the common people seem to have begun rebelling against their lords. During this time, many statues and monuments were destroyed. The Putuni Palace, where the rich lived, was also burned. People began to leave Tiwanaku and go and live in the countryside. And around the same time, their trade settlements in different places also start to be abandoned. We still don't know the exact causes behind all this, why they disintegrated the way that they did, or why these other people were so against them, if there was some reason just other than scarcity. Interestingly, the Aymara people today, which as you heard at the start is where we get the word Tiwanaku from, consider the city to be their spiritual capital, and they consider themselves to be the descendants of the people that built it, which I mean, in kind of a roundabout way, is probably true. Like I said, after the nobles and stuff were defeated, the common people seemed to have spread out across the neighboring countryside. And since it was probably the common people themselves that were moving and lifting and crafting the stone as opposed to the nobles, you could argue that yes, it probably was at least some of their ancestors that helped construct the city. And certainly it's not my place, a white girl from Canada, to tell them that they're wrong about their spiritual beliefs. I do want to note, however, that the nobles or kings or whatever of Tiwanaku that would have been paying for and ordering the city built almost certainly would not have considered themselves part of the Aymara collective, or they most likely would not have been getting attacked by them. But regardless of what happened to the inhabitants of Tiwanaku, by the time the Inca would stumble across this place some 400 to 500 years later, the only people left inside the city were the ones made of stone. As I said, this place would grab and have a particular hold on their spiritual consciousness. The statues and carved representations of deities everywhere made them think of their creator, Viracocha. They would claim that some of the statues here at Tiwanaku were ancient giants that the god had created before creating mankind. And eventually, Tiwanaku would have sort of a strange second half-life and would become a pilgrimage center again, but this time for the Inca, who would travel here to this mysterious place where the gods lived to present their gifts and prayers to those that had come before. And of course to Viracocha himself, who some archaeologists and anthropologists now believe was based off of, at least partly, the staff god you've seen here several times. So in a way, I guess we shouldn't feel guilty about being a little bit mystified by Tiwanaku. We're continuing a long tradition and in good company. And there's something really magical about this place. Even just looking at it through pictures, I've never been lucky enough to go in person. I would love to. I don't know if it's just the landscape or the mystery of it all, but there's something truly primeval about Tiwanaku and the Pumapunku and everything else. A place that's become so legendary that even long-dead empires marveled at her. A place where the gods came to earth, at least for a little while. And while many different cultural groups, not just the Aymara, have claimed some sort of stake in Tiwanaku over the years, regardless of talk of ownership, the effect that this ancient, beautiful civilization has had on us has been long-lasting and reverberating. The Incan and every other culture that came after the people of Tiwanaku would be directly and clearly influenced by their artistic and cultural and spiritual beliefs. While they may be long gone now, there's no part of modern-day South America that wasn't touched by them and partly created by them. The wisdom of Tiwanaku and her many secrets has outlasted her own people, the people of the Inca, the Spanish conquistadors, and now, as I sit here, I'm pretty sure it's going to outlast me too. But maybe that's okay, and I'm getting very, very deep into it now. I apologize. Like I said, this place has a has a weird effect on me. I can literally give myself chills, actually, if I think about it too hard. But what are you guys all thinking? Let me know. What do you think about Tiwanaku? Do you have any ideas on how it may have been constructed? I know some of the articles I read mentioned that there were specific grooves that were carved or drilled into some of the stone or concrete slabs, whatever you want to call them, to seem to make it easier for them to be moved by rope. I don't know, just the scale of the stonework is kind of breathtaking. Let me know your thoughts. But I am going to stop there for today before I get myself too wound up. And as always, guys, if you find yourself particularly interested in our topic today, then please don't let my words be the last words you hear on Tiwanaku. Just like always, you'll find a full source list pinned to the top comment below, but please don't stop there. And may I say, your local library might have an awesome book on the history of South America, or on something else about South America, or just it'll have a book on something cool, because it's the library. I say this every time, and I mean it every time. Get your butt to the library. I'm working on a cheesy romance novel right now, which I know is not very highbrow, but I don't care about highbrow. It is delightful, and it's fun, and the bosoms are heaving. You get yourself to the library, you get yourself something fun to read. You get something fun and nice, and then you come back and you let me know how you made it out. And once you're back from the library, if you liked what you saw here today, then please consider checking out the rest of my channel. You'll find lots more unusual and mysterious tales from our past. So hopefully I'll see you again soon, but either way, thank you again so much for being here today. Be safe, be happy, go with all my love. Until next time, goodbye.